Okay, again, we're going to get started. Oh, geez. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. This is dual enrollment information night. I'm going to go through everything like I said. One of the really helpful websites that was developed is this link that's on the screen, the chsmowr.weebly.com. This website is really helpful because it kind of details all of the ins and outs and just a kind of a simplified version of the PowerPoint. Honestly, it's all there. So there's a lot of rules that have changed over the past year and funding changes and things like that. So I tried to detail it on the website. It's called MOWR because years ago, dual enrollment was at one time called Move On When Ready, and I don't know how to change the website link without redoing the website. So that's why the Weebly is there. Okay, so we're going to move through. So what is dual enrollment? So dual enrollment is basically a program that provides funding for high school students to go to a Georgia college or a technical school or university or whatever and take approved college coursework where you get credit at the high school and you're getting credit for college. And typically it meets a graduation requirement, whether it is a core class or an elective class, but there's ways to get college paid for while you're in high school. And it's a pretty cool program, and I think that it offers a lot of flexibility for students, but participants do have to meet the admission requirements for that institution that they're trying to enroll at. So if a student's trying to enroll at Georgia State, they have to meet their specific admissions requirements. Students can take classes at the college, or they can do them through distance learning or online. We have the bulk of our students, and I think we're like close to 300 dual enrollment students this year. The bulk of our students do their classes online. It just adds more flexibility. It's easier to schedule in the high school schedule, so just know that that's always an option. Dual enrollment is offered during all terms, summer, fall, and spring. Not very many students do it in the summer. I will say that if you choose to take a summer class, the classes start in May, and it is before our semester ends. So it's before Chattahoochee wraps up, and so you may be balancing more than you bargained for. But you know, it's certainly an option. If you take a summer class, most students do not take more than one. So just know that it's a little bit more limiting. Students cannot take more than 15 credit hours in a semester. Most take one or two classes, even in the fall and spring, and then the rest of their schedule might fall at the high school. And I'll kind of show you some examples later in the presentation so you can kind of see what that looks like. All communication from the college goes directly through the student. It does not go through the parent. The student is considered a college student, and so they treat them as such. So if a parent reaches out to a faculty member, the faculty member is not going to respond to the parent. They will only communicate with the student. Likewise, one of the big hurdles is, you know, at high school, parents can check grades in Infinite Campus, and you can check on whether or not your student or whether or not your student's doing their work, or whether or not they need recovery, or whether or not, you know, that test grade was good enough or whatever. At the college, there is none of that. In fact, we don't even get any communication from the college about grades until the very end of the semester when transcripts arrive. So sometimes it's a surprise to find out that a student did not pass a class. I know we had some big surprises this last semester, and it is, or it can impact graduation and whether or not a student is still on track for graduation and that kind of thing. So it is important to know that, you know, the student is completely a college student. Another thing that often comes up is about parking passes for Chattahoochee. So Those are completely awarded at the discretion of administration. It is not, parking passes have nothing to do with the counseling office. We don't award them, we don't hand them out, we don't take money for them, anything like that. So if you're going to do dual enrollment part-time, or you feel like you're going to be on campus a little bit of the time and you need to be able to park here, you have to arrange to make sure you get a parking pass ahead of time. And that's a conversation to have with the assistant principal's office. Actually, I think most everything about parking is posted online, so you can get it there. Like I've said, I'm going to say this several times during the presentation, it really is imperative to read everything very carefully. If you miss something because you don't read it, you're gonna suffer some sort of consequence. And it comes often in like textbooks. Students don't always read their emails, and so they'll miss something about how to get their free textbook, or how to get their online code for their textbook, or how to withdraw from a class and they miss that deadline, or how to get registered, how to remove a hold. All of these things, if the student is not reading their college email or reading emails from me, then it can result in a consequence down the line. There is another alternative DE program called Option B. The post of the information is at that link. It is a little bit of a more complicated program in that it's really only for technical schools. The student has to earn a whole associate's degree, which is way over the amount of funding that's provided. So there's a lot of caveats to that. If you're interested, please see your counselor, but that's pretty, I don't think we've really had any students take that program thus far. So maybe one student a year would do the option B. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Okay, so these are some common dual enrollment acronyms. DE, I often will just say DE because it's easier than dual enrollment. USG is the University System of Georgia schools. Those might include your four-year institutions like West Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia State, Georgia Tech, UGA. Those are all University System of Georgia schools, like Kennesaw. I could name them all, but I won't. And then we have TCSG, which is the Technical College System of Georgia, which is your tech schools like the Gwinnett Tech, the Lanier Tech, the Chattahoochee Tech. Those are technical schools. They follow a different accreditation than USG schools. So if a student is going to go to Gwinnett Tech, it's just there are some classes that will automatically transfer over to USG, but not all of them. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with what classes might transfer later down the line. SAP is the Satisfactory Academic Progress. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but there are certain checkpoints that a student has to satisfy in order to continue with dual enrollment for the college side of things. There's the W, which means withdrawn. There's a WF, which is withdrawn failing. A WF you do not want. That honestly ends up as a failing grade on the student transcript here at the high school. And that's basically withdrawing after the deadline. GSFC is the Georgia Student Finance Commission. That is the umbrella organization that keeps up with Georgia Futures, which is who handles Hope Scholarship and Zell Miller Scholarship and the funding of dual enrollment. So you'll be very familiar with GSFC and Georgia Futures by the end of this, which is actually a good thing because a lot of students need it anyway senior year. Okay, so the big thing that has come across in the last year, and believe me when I say last year was a little complicated because we always have our presentation on dual enrollment in late January, early February, and then they changed all the rules on us in like March. So we had to regroup. Basically, ninth graders, so this would be our rising ninth graders. So ninth graders are not eligible to participate at all, period. That is a rule that's been implemented. For Gwinnett Tech, it can be 10th through 12th graders. There are some caveats there that I'll say in a second. And when I talk about who can participate, I'm referring to next year. So if you're a current ninth grader, yes, you can participate in dual enrollment for next school year. These are for rising 10th through 12th graders. And same with GSU, they only allow 11th and 12th graders. So if you're a current 10th grader and you're a rising 11th grader or a rising 12th grader, then you could potentially do Georgia State. And then we have Georgia Tech. It too can be 10th through 12th. They have very specific requirements, very competitive program to get into. You must have taken AP Calc BC, and 10th graders must have had AP Calc BC and must meet their test score requirements to do dual enrollment. So for 10th graders, they are only allowed to take career tech electives at Gwinnett Tech unless they have required test scores. The test scores that are required by the state are a combined score of a 1200 on the SAT or a composite score of a 26 on the ACT. If you meet those minimums, then you can take a core or an academic course and not just CTAE electives. But if you do not have those test scores, the only classes that you are eligible to take are career tech electives, such as a business elective, a criminal justice elective. Usually it's electives that might fall into an area of interest. The one thing that they will no longer require or allow, they don't allow, the state does not allow any fine arts classes anymore. So it used to be that a student could take art appreciation or music appreciation or something like that, or even drawing or photography or something like that. That is not allowed anymore and will not be allowed to be taken through the dual enrollment program. So there's very specific instructions. If you are a rising 10th grader and you would like to take a class and you really want to take an academic class and you meet the SAT or ACT standards, then there are specific instructions on how to send those test scores to Georgia Student Finance Commission, GSFC, and those are on our dual enrollment website. Okay, so those are listed there. If you do not have the test scores, you can only take electives. Okay, so I want to be very clear about that because this is a new change. Other changes across the board are that students cannot take more than 30 credit hours with dual enrollment. So typically a college class, one college class is going to be 3 credit hours, almost always. I mean, there's some classes that are 2 or some that are 3 plus a lab, which might be 4, but the bulk majority are going to be 3 credit hour classes. So you have to keep track of how many credit hours you have already banked because you cannot go over 30. So, and you also cannot be funded for the same class twice. So I had a student last year that took English 1101. They got a D in the class. A D transfers to us as a 70, as a passing grade. And I know this is more information than you bargained for, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So basically, that student got the D. Well, there's a prerequisite to move on at the college. You have to get a C or better to move on to English 1102. Well, she didn't have the C, so she couldn't take the next English. She wanted to retake English 1101. We could not do that because we can't pay for the same class twice. So that's where, you have to kind of check what the prerequisites are and kind of go from there. Students who withdraw from 2 college classes at any point, they are not permitted to continue in the dual enrollment program. So if a student withdraws this year from an English 1101 and then next year withdraws from Psych 1101, they are out. They are no longer allowed to participate. So at any point you withdraw from 2 college classes, then you are no longer allowed to continue because basically the state has paid for those classes and they are trying to get their investment back. They want you to be able to stick with the program. And they're not going to continue paying for a student that's just going to withdraw. That is a big change as well. Students can pay to take a class, but it will be outside of your school day. It cannot count as one of your 6 classes, and it will not be reported on your high school transcript. The only way it would be reported on your high school transcript is if the class was going to satisfy a grad requirement. That's the only way we can add it to the transcript. But either way, that's in addition to the classes that you're taking at Chattahoochee. So just keep that in mind. that self-pay is really not a great option. Again, academic or your tech classes, CTA classes, will be funded. This is a huge change too, where I highlighted at the very bottom that the EOC is going to be required for American Lit this coming year. So this is a new thing from the state. I also don't know how much the EOC is going to be weighted next year. I know that for this year it's like 0.01. It's hardly anything, but next year I don't know if they're going to go back to 20%. We don't know the details on that yet. But I will let you know that American literature, you would have had to take English 1101 and English 1102 before you ever have the option of doing American Lit. But some students this year took 1101 and 1102 so that they could take American Lit next year, their senior year. Just know that if you choose to do American Lit at the college, you're going to be expected to take the EOC. Okay, so what is a good fit for a dual enrollment student? Of course, we're looking for responsible and organized and mature students that take initiative. One of the big things is communicating with adults independently without parent support. If students cannot do that on their own, dual enrollment may not be a good fit. It's not a good fit for every student. It's an option. You know, we have so many options on the table, even for this coming year. So know that dual enrollment is not the only option. Advanced placement is not the only option. But if you're going to do dual enrollment, you need to be able to do most of your things independently. You need to check your email regularly. You have to be able to manage two separate schedules, your high school schedule and your college schedule. And then if you're also an athlete, or you work a part-time job, or you have other responsibilities, there's a lot that might be on your plate. You have to have a plan for how your coursework is going to fit into your four-year plan. You need to work ahead of deadlines. You need to be on track for graduation. And if you are going to choose to take the class at the college, then the logistical challenges of getting to the college and back to the high school and all of that needs to be worked out at time. So these are a lot of things. I like to add in that if you're a student or you are a student who requires and needs a lot of recovery or help or extra assistance right now with your classes, dual enrollment might not be the best fit. And I'm not saying that college is not a good fit in the long term, but maybe in this moment, you need to work on some other skills and prepare for college. And this is just a really, it takes a lot of initiative, a lot of motivation to stay on top of everything, because it's a lot of just management of a different way of doing school, and you're kind of dropped in it without a whole lot of hand-holding. So the two main options for dual enrollment are as a full-time student or a part-time student. And the full-time student is taking at least 4 college classes that total the 12 to 15 credit hours in a semester. So all the classes are taken at the college, either online or face-to-face at the college. And you wouldn't take any classes at Chattahoochee. The student is still enrolled at the high school, fully eligible to participate in clubs and in sports, all the events, prom, graduation, all of that stuff. I mean, you are a high school student, you're a Chattahoochee student, but you are attending all of your classes at the college. The one thing I think you should know about full-time is now that they've imposed that 30-hour credit rule, if this is your first year doing dual enrollment, then yeah, you definitely have enough hours to get in a full load and not go over your 30 limit. But if you did dual enrollment this year and then you're going to do it again next year, just know that you may have to watch how many classes you're signing up for and make sure you don't go over that 30-hour limit. For part-time students, it is anything fewer than 12 credit hours. So usually it's 1, 2, or 3 periods in the day. And you have to be enrolled in 6 classes between Chattahoochee and the college. So, you've got to be enrolled in a total of 6 classes. If you're taking 2 at the college, then you're taking 4 at Chattahoochee. If you're taking 1 at the college, you're taking 5 at Chattahoochee. And so you have to coordinate those class schedules and how they're offered, especially if you plan to take a class at the college, you need to be aware of our bell schedule and what time, first period ends, because if you're only taking one class at the college, then and it's going to be in the morning, then you have to be able to get here in time for second period. Or, if you're doing it in the afternoon, you need to make sure you check your schedule. If you're doing it online, and that's your format of how you plan to sign up for classes, then, we can put the class really anywhere in the schedule that it fits. It's a lot more flexible if you do it online. You do need to allow for safe driving time between the high school and the college if you choose to do a face-to-face class. And you cannot enter and exit the high school campus multiple times a day. So it's either you're taking dual enrollment in the morning or you're doing it in the afternoon. You're not like, oh, I'm coming in the morning and then I've got a class kind of midday and then I'm going to come back here and, that kind of thing. It's either in the morning or it's in the afternoon. Or if you choose to do it where it's online and it will only fit in the middle of the day, then you are here on our campus and you are doing it in our virtual lab, which is not always a popular choice with students because they want all that flexibility. And to be honest, we don't have the freedom of just saying, oh, you can go to the media center and you can go there. It doesn't really work that way, especially in pandemic times. We have to be able to do contact tracing. We have to know where every student is, especially if there was an incident on campus and we needed to know where every student was. Then, we have to make sure you're in a supervised location, so it's not just kind of a free-for-all. These are some examples of part-time schedules and how they kind of work. So top left, we've got if a student were to do 2 morning classes, and this 7 to 8:15 and 8:30 to 9:45, those are typical college start times. So if you were to do 2 college classes, that might be how it might work out, okay? If you were to do 1 morning class right below it, a morning class face-to-face, not online at the college, a morning class would have to be, and you only did 1, would have to be from 7 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. and then be able to get here in time for your second period class to start at 9:18, because the next college class starts at 8:30, and so if you signed up from that 8:30 to 9:45, you're then going to be late for second period. So that's where it's really important to know the bell schedule and how it will fit into your schedule, not just with the high school classes, but the college classes. Again, if you're taking an online college class, it's more flexible than this, but I just wanted to show you typical college class times for how they might work in the schedule. So the dual enrollment process, it's really a 2-step process. I'm going to laugh at that because it's really like 50 million steps, but I'm going to try and break it down into, there's the high school process, which is step 1. And then you have the college process, which is the second half of it, step 2. But the high school process, all the tasks are going to be completed through Naviance. And it is required for all current and new dual enrollment students. So if you're a current dual enrollment student, you're taking classes this school year, you still have to do all of the paperwork for me again next year. I have to have a new Fulton County contract. I have to have a new interest form. I have to have a new funding application. All of these things have to happen every school year. So just because you did it this year does not mean you're excused from doing it next year. So just know, even if you plan to apply to Georgia Tech, like my students that are sitting in AP Calc BC, if you plan to apply to Georgia Tech, you have to go ahead and do all of these steps now. You can't wait until later in the semester. So, I'm going to kind of work through some of this stuff, but there's a dual enrollment interest form, there's a Fulton County contract, there's a funding application, there are funding Google forms for each semester, and then once you officially get registered, you have to upload a screenshot of your actual college schedule to your counselor on Naviance. The second half of the process is the actual college process, because that's something that we cannot manage for you. The student has to apply to the college as a college student. The student has to submit all of their supplemental materials for whatever is required for that college, and I'm going to go through that in a minute. The student has to get accepted. and then follow through on all the college processes, like an orientation, a registration, like all the enrollment steps, in order to then have a schedule to present to us. Okay, so the college process, I think a lot of times students think, oh, Ms. Chilson's, I submitted my Fulton County contract and I did the funding app, so Ms. Chilson's going to handle the college process. That is not what happens. The student has got to do all of the steps for the college all on their own. So I'm happy to help talk through any struggles. And I will say that all of the counselors in our office do a magnificent job of explaining all of this, and students can go to their school counselor and get the same information. So not everybody needs to come to me, but I think we're all available to help and work through these questions. But just know that the college process truly is a college process. The student is applying to college, and the high school cannot manage that for them. So let's talk about Gwinnett Tech. Gwinnett Tech has no minimum GPA that is required. You do have to meet their minimum test scores, and all of that is on their website. Test scores for them, I saw somebody ask in the chat about the SAT, is it going to be required? And so Gwinnett Tech is I think, very flexible. They will take an SAT, an ACT, an AccuPlacer, which you can schedule with them, or they will take a PSAT score. So if you have taken the PSAT and you have PSAT scores, we can send those for you. There's a process for that on the counseling, the dual enrollment Weebly. So that website that I put on the very first slide, the Weebly, chsmowr.weebly.com, all of the directions on how to request PSAT scores are there. And then, of course, you have to have a complete admissions file. You have to apply, you have to do the funding app, which is the same funding app you're doing for me. Same thing. So once you complete it for them, you can check it off for me. The official test scores, and then they have a tuition acknowledgement form that a parent has to sign and the student has to sign, acknowledging kind of what you're getting into. And that is a complete file. I will say current dual enrollment students have to also resubmit all of these items above. The only thing you do not have to do is resubmit test scores for the second year, because they already have those on file. You have to get a complete file before they are going to make a decision about your application. After they have made a decision about your application, then you can move forward with the orientation or whatever next steps the college is going to expect you to do for Gwinnett Tech. I will say Gwinnett Tech is very efficient in their paperwork sequence. They are, they're really good about doing things fairly quickly. So just know Gwinnett Tech has a lot of great college options, a lot of intro requirements that a student can meet, and they have career tech electives. So it's an awesome opportunity. Many of them will transfer definitely to in-state schools. If you're looking at an out-of-state college, you really need to do your due diligence to investigate whether or not they'll take the credit from Gwinnett Tech. And that's on the student or the parent to check on transferability. So GSU admissions requirements, they're a little bit more hefty because they are a University System of Georgia school, like I said, and they require a minimum of a 3.0 grade point average as calculated by the university. As you know, on our transcripts, on Chattahoochee's transcripts, we don't calculate on a 4.0 scale. We calculate on a 100 point average. So the best way to know where you kind of stand is by looking at your Hope GPA, because when Georgia State calculates it, they typically are going to take out all of the electives and things like that. So you have to recalculate it to know kind of where you stand, but you do have to meet their minimum of a 3.0. A complete file for Georgia State includes the application to the college, the official high school transcript, the funding application through Georgia Futures, okay, the official test scores, which are not required. If you look at the chart below, You don't have to submit test scores. They're not required for this upcoming admission cycle. However, if you look at the chart, if you have not completed at least through Algebra 2, they're not going to accept you. So please know that, there are certain standards that Georgia State is going to have, and if you don't meet them, then Gwinnett Tech is a good alternative option. You can also, if you've not taken through Algebra 2 and you want to try to get into Georgia State, then you should take the AccuPlacer, or you should submit an SAT or an ACT score so they can evaluate your application. So as you can see, under Math Learning Support Exemption at the very bottom where I've highlighted, you have to have successful completion of 2 units of math, including Algebra 2 or equivalent, or do their AccuPlacer in the math. Most students that are 11th and 12th graders are going to meet the English requirements. It's the math where it's really gets a little dicey on the acceptance. And then after you get accepted, there's a whole nother host of steps that you have to do. And those are detailed on the Georgia State website. And I strongly encourage parents and students to go to the Georgia State University. You can just Google GSU dual enrollment program and look specifically for the perimeter college option, because they also have an option where you can do dual enrollment through the Atlanta campus. The Atlanta campus has higher standards than the perimeter college location. Okay, so one of the things that we get a lot is questions about Georgia State, and students are answering incorrectly on the first 3 questions of the application. And if you answer incorrectly on one of those first 3 application questions, you're going to run into difficulties because your application is going to fall into a different pile. So as I said earlier, you got to read everything. So the number 1 tip is that on the first question, it asks if you're a degree seeking student. You should respond that you're a non-degree seeking student, because that includes dual enrollment. The second question asks about which campus you want to attend. And then the third question asks what kind of student type you are. None of the options are going to populate correctly if you don't answer that first question correctly. That's basically what this says. And this came directly from word of mouth at the admissions office at Georgia State. This is what they run into the most in terms of pitfalls. The other thing that I've highlighted at the very bottom, and this is kind of a sticking point with Georgia State, is it can take up to 21 business days to process a document that's sent to them. So if you wait to do your application, it can take 21 days, and then later we send your transcript, and it can take 21 days. So just know that the sooner that you can get everything entered in, then your file is complete, then they're going to be able to make decisions about your application. Okay, so GSU requires an official transcript be sent. We have Naviance that came about this year, and Naviance really doesn't allow for underclassmen to send transcripts. So what we have decided to do is that when a student fills out the dual enrollment interest form in Naviance, and they tell me that they're going to apply to Georgia State on the interest form, then Chattahoochee is going to go ahead and send your transcript to Georgia State, but we're going to do it through Georgia Futures, which is part of Georgia Student Finance Commission. So we have an option to upload transcripts through Georgia Futures. It can only go to in-state colleges. Georgia State, of course, is one of those, so we can send your transcript as long as the student indicates interest on the dual enrollment interest form. Please allow at least 3 days for us to complete that process, because after tonight, I'm probably going to have a lot of requests, and it's going to take a little bit of time. It also is best practice to have a student submit their application and then do the transcript, but we're going to kind of work through this together. And then I'll hit the interest form here in a second. Okay, so Georgia Tech, all their information's on their website. The big kicker with them is that their application does not even open until May 15th. And they only allow 1 month, a whole month, to get the applications in. So a student has until May 15th to June 15th to apply to the Georgia Tech dual enrollment program. The high school transcript, including spring courses and grades, can come from an unofficial transcript, but what they want is specifically they want to see your spring grades. So you cannot, you have to wait until spring grades get posted at the end of the semester and then send that document. Again, it's posted, your unofficial transcript is always posted in Infinite Campus on the documents portal, and Georgia Tech will accept that document, okay? A college transcript from any other institution that you've attended, you have to send those. Those cannot come from the high school. It has to come directly from the college. So if you did dual enrollment this year and then you're trying to do dual enrollment at Georgia Tech next year, you have to send the official transcript from whatever college you were at this year doing dual enrollment, like Georgia State or Gwinnett Tech. Okay, and then dual enrollment applicants to Georgia Tech do not need to submit an SAT or an ACT score to be considered for this year's cycle. Again, because of the COVID, because of the pandemic and everything going on, they've been a little bit more lenient about submitting test scores. However, you do have to submit your AP test results, and those are needed to fulfill prerequisites for courses that you want to take later. And then they always seem to have some sort of a prospective student meeting in late April. I called and talked to Miss Simmons the other day and at Georgia Tech, and she said they haven't set a date yet, but it's going to be posted to the Georgia Tech website as soon as they do. There are three main programs for Georgia Tech. Well, really, I guess now there's a fourth, but there's the Distance Learning Math Year 1. This is probably the one that most students are trying to apply for. It's a highly competitive program. It is not just for Fulton County students or anything like that. It's for students all over the state. And you're taking linear algebra and multivariable calc. And everything, typically exams are done with a proctor who is usually Miss Weil. Our tag coordinator handles that. Then there's the Distance Learning Math Year 2 program. It is only for students that have done the Year 1 program. So unless you've done Year 1, you can't even apply for Year 2. The new option that's on the scene is that they do offer a distance computer science program called CS 1301. It is the equivalent of AP Computer Science A. So if you're in AP Computer Science A or you are on track to do it here, I probably would not switch over and do Georgia Tech. It's only a 1 semester class, and so we would need to figure out what you're going to do the other semester with us. And you must have completed at least 2 APs or DE classes in math and science. So unless you meet those requirements, then you cannot apply for the computer science program at Tech. If you want to be a full-time Georgia Tech student, again, it's a highly competitive program. It uses the same application process, but all the classes are taken at Georgia Tech's campus downtown. Okay, so how does the grading and credits work? So colleges assign letter grades, and then Fulton County converts them to numeric averages. So I always get a question, I got a question about this in December. So if a student earns a 99 in their college class, it only posts as an A to Fulton County, and we post it as a 95. Okay, so even though the student really makes a 99 at the college, we can't post the 99. We have to post what we convert them to. So if you get an A, it's a 95, a B is an 85, a C is a 75, a D is a 70, and an F is a 60. A D at the college is typically a 60 to a 69, but that to us is a 70. So whenever a student's like, I'm failing, I'm like, what do you have in the class? Do you have a 65? And they're like, I have a 67. And I'm like, well, as long as you can keep in the 60s, then you're going to pass the class, but it is going to be a D on the college transcript. But it's passing for us for high school. So we do add 7 points to any passing college course grades. So if the student gets a B, that's an 85. You add the 7 points. On our transcript, it's going to show a 92. Okay, and same with the A, and same with the C, and same with the D. You don't get anything extra for earning an F. So for Hope Scholarship, it's all, it counts as an extra weight on your transcript, or for Hope Scholarship anyway, on your Hope transcript. You get an extra 0.5, but nothing can be more than a 4.0. So if a student gets an A in a college class, even though we are adding on those 7 points, and it will, you know, post as a 102 on the transcript, the Hope Scholarship is not going to add anything extra. An A is an A. You're only going to get 4 quality points for the Hope or Zell. Whereas if you got a B in a college class, instead of 3 quality points, you're going to get 3.5. And a C, you'll get 2.5. So just know kind of that's how it works. Final grades for all dual enrollment classes are going to be posted to the high school transcript. So, you know, if it's through dual enrollment and you get an F, we have to post that class. So the other thing is that dual enrollment classes only count towards the student's initial Hope eligibility. They do not count, like once you get to college, it's not like you're gonna keep on having to deal with that dual enrollment grade as part of your Hope eligibility. Okay, withdrawals. And like I said, dual enrollment has so much to it. So I'm glad that y'all are asking questions. I can see there's a lot of questions being asked, and we're going to hit the high points probably at the end, but it's hard for me to judge, I'll be honest, doing this in my office and figuring out what kinds of questions are being asked, because I'm just trying to get through the presentation. But let's talk about withdrawals. So students really need to notify their school counselor before they withdraw from a college class. If a student withdraws from a course and doesn't enroll in another course at the college or at the high school, then they definitely will get the W on their high school transcript. W doesn't earn high school credit. It doesn't impact a GPA. It just shows that when you do apply to college, like later down the line, the W is going to show on your high school transcript, and the colleges that you're applying to will know that you withdrew from a class at some point. If a student withdraws after the college deadline, a WF is going to post. I really struggle with this one. It needs to be a real severe circumstance to withdraw after the deadline, because that WF is going to post as a failing grade. And as you can see in the chart down below, a typical college class is 3 to 5 hours, usually 3, or translates as 1 whole high school unit for us. So if a student takes Psychology 1101 in the fall semester, and that is worth a whole credit on our transcript, if you withdraw after the deadline, that failing grade is counting as 1 full credit of a failure on your transcript. Whereas a high school class, it's a 0.5 in the fall and a 0.5 in the spring. But, you know, failing a 0.5 versus failing a full credit is it's a big difference. So just know that students should always be aware of their deadlines. Reminder, student cannot withdraw from any 2 dual enrollment classes at any point, or else they're not eligible anymore to participate. And that's not a good option. So how college course credit works is that if a student takes a 1 to 2 semester hour credit hour class, typically like a science lab, might be 1 credit hour, you're only earning a 0.5 on the high school transcript. However, when you sign up for a science class, you have to sign up for the science and you have to sign up for the lab. So you're also taking the science class. So if you take the science class, and that one is going to count as a full credit on your high school transcript, because it's going to be a 3 credit hour class. Passing grade in English 1101, oh, I spelled that wrong in the PowerPoint. It's ENGL 1101. Fall of senior year does satisfy the 4th English credit. So when a student takes a college class, 1 class at the college is 1 semester in high school, but satisfies the whole year. So that's a big thing to like wrap your head around when you're trying to do the scheduling piece of it. And again, I'm going to show you some examples of how I usually work it out with students, so you can kind of see how my brain works later. Okay, so earlier I mentioned the SAP, the satisfactory academic progress. Students do have to maintain SAP as defined by their institution in order to continue participating in the DE program. One of the common requirements is that you got to get at least a 2.0 or higher each semester. So if you're not meeting that 2.0 minimum, you may not be asked to return. You may not be given the option to return. You might be forced to come back to the high school for classes. Students are responsible for checking with the selected institution to get the requirements down. Gwinnett Tech does have additional requirements. They're a little more complicated to figure out, but you know, I think students need to pay attention to what they require, because it's a little bit more than just the 2.0. It's also includes, like, if you withdraw from a class and you don't complete, it's like a completion requirement as well. An ineligible dual enrollment student would be required to return to the high school the following semester. Their graduation status might be at risk. If you don't do well enough in your classes, you might be required to withdraw. And low grades can impact graduation requirements, HOPE eligibility, college admission opportunities. All those kinds of things can be impacted by not doing well with dual enrollment. Again, you know, I see a lot of cases where it's just like, I had one year where a student had like a great grade in the class. Everything was going well, but then they did not show up for the final exam. They like missed it for whatever reason. And the professors are not lenient. They're not going to say, oh, it's okay, you can come and retake it next week. It's a 0. And usually with college classes, there are so few assignments that are weighted. You know, like an English class might only have 4 essays the whole time, and each essay is worth, you know, a huge chunk, a 25% of your grade or whatever. And so if you do badly on one essay, it can really impact your overall grade for the class. So everything is just weighted a little bit differently in the way college professors work. This is an example. The student takes 2 dual enrollment classes in the fall, makes a C and an F, and so averaged together, that's a 1.0 GPA. That's not high enough to continue. So then they would have to come back to the high school. We would have to figure out at the high school what the F was in. Was it something that was necessary for graduation? And if so, we've got to figure out how to add it back in the schedule. And hopefully they can still graduate on time. These are some things that students have told me, and you know, I just, from doing this program for several years, this is some things that you know, that students love about it: the flexibility, the college credit, the saving money. They love the experience of trying out a college class. They like to maybe leave school early or come late to school. It's definitely different than AP in a lot of ways, because it's completely professor discretion as to how things are taught. A lot of academic freedom in the classroom. It can definitely free up your time. Books are free. There's no charge for mandatory student fees, but there may be some additional fees that are charged, like lab fees. Students have to pay for lab fees. That's just an example. Can complete prerequisites for college majors a little bit earlier. Things that are not great: professors will not accept late work. Getting through the process of the acceptance and the enrollment and the registration and everything can be very frustrating. A lot of times I've had students that are full-time dual enrolled and they feel completely disconnected from peers at the school. You really need to check your college email daily, because you're going to miss information. Every teacher, professor does things differently, and that can be really hard to figure out, because you're a college student, you're responsible for getting the information on your own. You have to be organized. You're not going to get reminders. Professors are not available like a high school teacher is available. Usually they're going to have specific office hours, and if you miss your office hours, then so, you know, that's too bad. I'll see you next week at my office hours. There may be longer response times. This isn't the case, of course, for every professor, but I have had my fair share of students that are frustrated, like, I emailed today and they haven't gotten back to me. You know, a lot of times students are used to an immediate response, and they want everything figured out in that moment. And a lot of times with dual enrollment, you have to wait. You have to wait to get your answer. So let's talk through the Naviance process. New students going to use Naviance. If you have not familiarized yourself with this process, it is important to do so. Now, Naviance is a portal inside of ClassLink. So ClassLink exists for a lot of things. Naviance is a new addition. Everybody has been assigned the interest form. I have given everyone, every 9th, 10th, and 11th grader, I have added a task in Naviance if you're interested to fill out the interest form. And then once you complete that interest form, then I will add you to all of the other steps. So just know that the dual enrollment interest form has to get done first, and then I can add the contract and the funding and the how to apply to college and the review stuff and all of those other wonderful steps. But if you don't do the interest form, you're going to be missing a big piece of it because you will not have been added to the rest of the program. This is what Naviance looks like, and I actually can pull up. I have a wonderful student that I was using as a gig for this because this is all new this year. And I'm gonna pull up our account and show you. But basically, when a student enters Naviance, this is what you're going to see. And at the top, you're going to see new messages. Every time I send something through Naviance, your parents will get it normally, and students get it through their Fulton County email. But they can also get it through Naviance. So if they wanted to check if I've sent any messages, they're going to be listed here. All of my communication will go through Naviance. I've had issues in the past. I've been doing this for a long time. And what I've discovered is that I send out multiple emails to hundreds of people. I get blocked. So the county blocks me. The county thinks I'm spam. And then I have to physically travel to the county office to get my all my stuff unlocked. And that in and of itself is a real pain. So I'm no longer doing that. Everything is going to go through Naviance. So, you know, one of the things that I want you to be familiar with is this screen. I will occasionally put messages here in the welcome message. And like tonight, I added to everybody's accounts this message about how to get online for the dual enrollment meeting. Where you're going to find all the tasks that have to happen are right here under important to-dos and tasks. And then later, 12th grade year, you're going to do more of like this colleges I'm applying to, or you might need more about, you know, college visits and things like that. This is kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of things, but we are using it this year for dual enrollment purposes. My first year doing it, I used Google Classroom. It was an awesome process. Everything was very clean and clear. But then the county took away my access to Google Classroom. So then I was going to set it up in Microsoft Teams, but apparently this many students cannot submit assignments through Microsoft Teams. It's like my classroom is too big, so I cannot use Teams. So now I'm using Naviance, and this is the way we're going to proceed from here on out. But when I pull up an actual student account so that you can see it, this is what it looks like. And you can see all the important to-dos. Now this student has already completed her interest form for me because I was doing a test run to make sure everything worked correctly. I will say that the steps are not really following in order, but they are labeled correctly. But you can do and see all in my planner. And then up here, when you get to the planner, you can go to tasks assigned to me. And then when you do that, it tells you tasks you need to work on. Now, the only students that are going to have all of these tasks listed are students that completed the interest form for dual enrollment. If a student does not complete the interest form, they are not going to be assigned all of these tasks to complete. As you can see, there's a recommended tab where everything else is required. The recommended tab is just for students that are trying to do a summer class. If you're doing a summer class, then you have to upload your summer schedule to us so that we can make sure we fund it correctly. And then down here, you can see tasks you've actually completed. So as you can see, she did the interest form for me. We actually did it in my office together. Again, we were doing a test run, but it's a quick, easy Google form. But like when you pull up a task, it tells you exactly what you need to do. You're only going to complete this if you intend to take dual enrollment next year. You have to post a comment in order to mark it complete. So if you don't post the comment, it's still going to show up as tasks that you need to work on. Okay, so please be advised that all the tasks are here, and I've tried to make it fairly clear as to how you can mark it complete and what you have to do to get it completed. Okay. Oh, the other thing I was going to show you, you can see that she has 3 messages. You know, if you check it in your Fulton County email, this isn't going to go away, but you can see, like, I've sent messages about dual enrollment, and even to my current dual enrollment students, like reminders, dual enrollment, spring registration. You know, if you're a junior, you get the junior advisement meeting. But yeah, so these are specific messages about how, you know, things that I need to communicate to the dual enrollment kids that are so important, that if you're not checking your messages, you're going to be a little bit lost. So you need to check these messages, and you need to check your college email as well. Okay, so those are some key points. Okay, so the Fulton County contract, you're going to complete the contract. It is a lengthy contract. I think it's like 4 or 5 pages. You're going to upload the completed form. It's in a PDF and it's fillable, so you should just be able to click on things to get the signatures in and submit it that way. Please do not submit 5 separate pages to Naviance. Just do the one PDF file, because it's hard for us on the counseling end to look at everything. Then there's the funding application. You have to do 1 each year. You complete it through Georgia Futures. You're going to make sure your social security number is correct. You're going to make sure to use your legal name. Do not use nicknames on any of the college stuff. Do not use a nickname. Use your legal name, or else it's going to come back to us that it doesn't match and we can't do the funding, and there's all kinds of issues if you don't do it correctly. If you don't have a social security number, it is okay. You can still do classes through dual enrollment. There are specific instructions, even a video that Georgia Futures did that I posted to this website, that you can still continue with the process. Course-specific fees are not paid, such as lab fees. And you also have to complete a Google form that tells me specifically what classes you're intending to take so that we fund them correctly. I know we ran into a lot of issues this last fall because students may have selected a class that they wanted to take, and then it was the wrong one, and so we funded the wrong one, and then Georgia State dropped them from the class because it wasn't funded correctly. So please make sure you choose wisely when you're picking your courses. This is what it's going to look like in the contract. I know y'all can't see me, but I'm going to take a sip of water. So in the contract, there's a specific place where you're supposed to list what your intended schedule is going to be. And this is kind of a screenshot of kind of what you should, you know, be looking to or aim to list. On the high school side, you are telling us, if you're going to be a part-time student, you're telling me what are your classes that you are going to take at the high school next year. In the dual enrollment side, you're telling me what classes you intend to take at dual enrollment for the next year. One of the things, you know, one summer, oh, it doesn't say it, but fall would be the second area with English 1101, that might be fall, and then spring, okay? So I know that this student plans to take these classes, AP Calc, Econ, Forensic Science, Band, and AP French in the fall at the high school. And then at the college, they intend to take 1 college class. So I know they're here for 5 periods, they're there for 1. Same with the spring schedule. They're going to take these classes. So Econ is only a semester-long class. The next semester, they're going to take internship, not Econ. That's the only change. And then over here, I know they're taking the second English class. So that's a good way for us to know what you intend to take, okay? Now, this I just decided to add in because when a student comes in my office and they're like, I really want to take a college class. I don't know how it all works out. This logistically is how I usually will write it out with a student. So, you know, you've got your semester 1, you've got your semester 2, because visually at the high school, the majority of classes are all year. So when you take Essentials of Healthcare, that is an all year elective. You're not coming out midway through the year. So for a student to visually see how we're going to schedule things out, and you know, I'm trying to prepare for how we're going to do the schedule here at the high school. So the top schedule, if y'all could see me in my office, I've got my hands everywhere and everything. But okay, so here the top student is taking college U.S. history in the first semester. That college class is a full credit of college U.S. history in the fall semester, and it's only going to take up 1 period. And then the second semester, they're going to switch over and do econ at the college, and that's totally fine. And then the rest of the schedule is going to get mapped out. This is kind of a schedule where it's 1 college class each semester, and they only wanted to do 1 period of it. Down at the bottom, I gave an example of this is actually kind of a current student, and they're doing 2 college classes each semester, and for 2 periods. So this is kind of how their schedule laid out. As you can see, first semester they took college algebra, second semester they took college English. And then for semester 2, they switched over and did college sociology and college lit types. Now, what's cool about this is that that student is earning 4 college credits or 4 college classes, or 12 college credits, 12 credits at the college by doing these 4 classes. So, you know, and they potentially are getting, if they do well on the AP exam, they're going to get this AP Comp Sci Principles credit. The student up here up top is earning a U.S. history credit at the college, so that's 3 credit hours. The college econ is 3 credit hours, so that's 6 credit hours, but they're also taking AP Bio, AP Lang, okay? So it's possible that that student too is going to come out with additional college credits that are already satisfied. Again, it's a way too for students that are more on-level students. That's totally fine. On-level students are totally fine doing dual enrollment. It's not just for AP kids. Every student can potentially do dual enrollment as long as, you know, they can follow through and do, you know, they're organized and they are ready for a little bit of a challenge. I mean, all of that is totally fine. So just want to offer up options about how some examples might look in a schedule. Okay, so let's talk about the timeline. The biggest thing to know is that I cannot accept any dual enrollment interests, dual enrollment contracts, applying to the college, any of that stuff after March 31st. Okay, March 31st is the county cutoff for accepting dual enrollment. And part of it is because we have to then figure out the funding and everything for teacher allotments and make sure we have teachers to teach here. So when a student completes the contract and you do the funding app and those initial steps, after we get the contract, we can then take a student's course request that your teacher has now recommended. You know, teachers have been recommending for probably the past 2 weeks for the upcoming year, and teachers cannot recommend dual enrollment. They can't put in dual enrollment as a recommendation. So what has to happen is once a teacher makes a recommendation, for example, the teacher might have recommended multicultural lit for next year for senior English. Well, if the student is planning to turn in a contract and they wanted to take English at the college, we would then go in and put in a placeholder. The placeholder goes in the schedule. That placeholder remains until the counselor gets an actual schedule from the college. When we have an actual schedule that they have been accepted and they have actually registered for a college class, that's when we can officially change it from a placeholder to a real live college class in the schedule. That will not happen typically until later because registration doesn't even open like for Georgia State or Gwinnett Tech until much later in the semester. So, that's one of those things that just know it does happen, but it cannot happen until after a student has given us an actual schedule. Now, we can put a placeholder in that you're intending to take a language arts class or a social studies class. And what this basically means right here under examples is DE, so dual enrollment, LA, language arts, pending acceptance and registration. Or DE, dual enrollment, SS, social studies, pending acceptance and registration. You can see that listed on recommendation requests, and we would take out the U.S. history and put in the DESS pending if we know that you're planning to take a history class in the fall. But we cannot put in the actual college history class in the schedule until after you've officially registered. Now, this is one of those things, and I don't know who I was talking to earlier, but dual enrollment never ends for us in the counseling office. It is like a constant, something we're having to check, something we're having to put in the schedule. So please bear with us and be patient as we work through all the students that are trying to do dual enrollment. August 1st is the final deadline. If you don't have an actual schedule from the college by August 1st, you haven't registered, you haven't done your piece, you haven't been accepted, you haven't worked through the process, then it's a no-go for fall. We will be putting back in the class that your teacher recommended. So make sure you work ahead of deadlines, make sure you get on top of everything, and get to know the academic calendar for the college. Every college posts an academic calendar. It's really important. These are some common class choices through dual enrollment. We are looking at, typical English classes, math. I've kind of laid it out as typical classes. Some students, if you took government freshman year, you just took the on-level government, but then senior year you have a space for an elective and you just want to take government at the college to get the college credit, that's totally fine. You can do that and it can be paid for. So just know that there's a lot of options here, including electives. I tried to put in some of the common ones that students like to take. Georgia State does offer languages, but Gwinnett Tech does not. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list. There's a lot more classes that you can check in the course catalog or on the directory. Georgia Futures has a whole directory of classes you put in. You can do the drop down for the college, like put in Gwinnett Tech, and then you can put in, what area you're trying to satisfy, and it will pull up all the classes and tell you even what prereqs exist for the classes. Again, you're going to have two schedules. You have a college schedule and you have a high school schedule. Students have to register for the college class that was listed in the Google funding form. So you're going to, the student's going to fill out and tell me what we're supposed to be funding. It should match what you register for. The deadline to register for college courses for us at the high school, our deadline is no later than August 1st. Now, if you get registered by May, that is fantastic. Then that way we can make sure it, gets in the schedule correctly, and when the schedule rolls in, July, everything lines up nicely. I always say, if you're going to do anything dual enrollment related, you have to be very flexible. And if there's an issue, your counselor is going to reach out, but you can always reach out to us as well. Always consult the academic calendar. That's one of those things. College classes are typically 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so that allows a lot of flexibility for students to do, other things on those other days. Make sure to sign up for full term classes, not a mini-mester. So you want to make sure that the class dates show August to December or January to May, because we do have students that accidentally sign up for the wrong location, like sign up for an actual class in Lawrenceville. And it's like, well, how are you going to drive all the way there? That's an hour away. And also accidentally sign up for a mini-mester, which would be like August to October. And it's just a real fast-paced class. So, these are things to be aware of. There's a lot of things that when you register, you want to make sure, it's one of those things that you just need to make sure you do your due diligence on checking the right things. The high school schedule in the spring, the students are going to identify projected courses of interest. You're going to put those on your contract. We'll put placeholders in the schedule. Like I just said, students have to then upload their schedules no later than August 1st. That's in Naviance. And then having a placeholder does not mean you're registered for the class. Just because I put a placeholder in, all that means is you turned in the contract. That does not mean you've been accepted. It doesn't mean you registered. It doesn't mean you worked through all the processes with the college. Things that we cannot manage, though, you know, students often will try to help us manage them. But college schedules and course availability. It's your responsibility to ensure that you're at the college exam on the date and the time outlined, especially if it's a face-to-face exam. College breaks and college holidays may be totally different than what we require, especially like spring break is usually falls differently at a college. College classes are not always offered at times that align with our schedule. Popular course times, online class times fill up very quickly. So the sooner you can get through processes and be the first to register. If you wait and delay, you're going to get last pick. Acceptance process. We cannot manage that for you. You have got to contact the dual enrollment office if you run into an issue with your acceptance process. Troubleshooting any holds on admissions or registration. Oftentimes, dual enrollment will put a hold on an account, preventing a student from getting registered if they have not done something important, like if they didn't check off their emergency contacts. That's an easy thing that has to be done every semester. And if it's not done, then you're going to have a hold on your account. If you're late doing anything for the registration process, then they're going to put a hold on your account, because dual enrollment students have a certain window of time. And if you miss that window, then they stick the hold back on the student. So if you need to clear any of those holds, all of that is done through the dual enrollment or admissions office. Communicating between you and the college. About individualized situations. If you have something that's happened, you missed a quiz, you had an absence, there was a health issue, and all of that communication has to be done through the student's college email address from the student to the college. Transferability of courses. The students need to have those conversations with the colleges where they want to enroll later. They need to make sure their credits will count. You have to do that on your own. We cannot manage that process for you. We are certainly here to advise you and support you, but we can't do it for you because you are an independent college student and you're also a high school student. But when you sign up for dual enrollment, you're agreeing that you can handle all of this responsibility. Okay, we are doing some Q&A sessions, so you're going to get started on all these processes. You're going to work through all of these steps and everything. And then on March 10th and March 30th from 4 to 5 in the afternoon, we will do a Teams meeting for anyone that wants to join and ask questions. These should be general questions that can be thrown out into a group, like, you know, I'm not understanding this question on the application, or how do I go about, you know, signing up for classes, or, you know, whatever your questions might be, or I don't know how to fill this out on the contract, or how do I submit it on Naviance? I don't understand Naviance, or whatever it might be, so that we can make sure things are getting answered for you. I know this is a lot of information. I know that this can be very overwhelming, but this is going to be, you know, offered as Q&A times for y'all to just, you know, any student to ask questions and log in. And I'll send the Teams link out through a mass email, which will be available in Naviance in the messages portal. So make sure you're checking your messages, because that's the way I'm going to send things out. And then hopefully, if we have any last minute questions, I know that somebody said they would like to see the website again. So I'll go back to the very beginning. And then Ms. Blunt or Ms. Murray, are there any main questions that we need to touch on?
So a common question that students are asking is about Naviance. And hang on, let me close my door. I'm getting some reverb here.
Yeah. I didn't realize my volume was messed up.
No, it's fine. Anyway, it's all good.
Okay.
Every single student has a Naviance account. You do not have to create a new login. You only go to ClassLink, click on the Naviance account. It's a single sign-on, you're in your account. So do not create a new account. You don't have to ask us to create an account, none of that. Just sign in using your regular Fulton County information and you're good to go. Let me see here. A couple students have asked about if they intend on applying to 2 colleges. Say you want to apply to Georgia State for college English, and then you want to apply to Georgia Tech for distance math. Do you have to do 2 separate sets of documents? So you don't have to do 2 completely separate sets of documents. You do 1 contract. We probably would ask you to do possibly the interest form twice, just so it captures you on both lists for Georgia State and Georgia Tech. And you do have to do 2 separate funding applications.
Let me jump in. On the interest form, students can select multiple institutions.
Thank you. Okay, and then I just corrected myself on the funding application. So when you submit the funding application, you just have to select more than 1 college. So You don't have to do 2 contracts, 2 multiples of everything. You can indicate on the contract that you're applying to more than 1 college.
Yes. Please only submit 1 set in Naviance, pretty much for everything. But I will say that when students last year were doing the funding app, if you get the college name wrong, like, for example, instead of saying Georgia State or Gwinnett Tech, I think a lot of students accidentally said Georgia Gwinnett College, which is a totally separate institution over in Lawrenceville. So that can be an issue. Or if a student selects the wrong high school, there is a Chattahoochee County High School in the area, not Chattahoochee High School. And when you're setting up your Georgia Futures profile or trying to do your funding application through Georgia Futures, if you select the wrong high school, it will not show up for us to do your funding.
A couple students have asked, or a couple people have asked about science classes, science labs, taking them online, etc. No matter where you take a college science class, whether you take the lecture online or the lecture in person, the lab is always required. Taking the main course online does not take away the lab co-requisite. And I don't know if you want to jump in about this, Ms. Chilson, but the handful of students I've had take a science class and a science lab online, I've shared it's pretty difficult. So I'm not sure that's something we would definitely, we would necessarily recommend. If it's something you insist on, then it's just, you knowing that.
And I will also say, like, some students have asked me specifically about, like, taking physics at the college. Physics is not a good idea to take at the college. And the biggest reason why is because the majority of the time you do not meet their prerequisite to get into that class. So, but it's also, the science classes are extremely difficult to do online, and to line them up in your schedule as a face-to-face college student is really difficult because lab times are never at the best times.
Yeah, one student asked about that, specifically about physics. So we went over the physics at the college requires college pre-calculus as a prerequisite on your transcript. That does not mean that taking high school pre-calculus at Chattahoochee meets that prerequisite.
Yeah. And also, just for this upcoming year, one of the things that students are going to be allowed to take up to 3 full central schools classes. They're just adamant about not wanting to take a separate class here on campus, but you just want to take it online. You can mix and match. You have some of your classes here on campus. You could do a full virtual class, and you could do a dual enrollment class. Do they all have a lot of processes involved with them? Yes. But it allows a lot of flexibility and choice in how you manage your schedule. And, that's one of those things that high school in general is completely different than when I was in high school, where students are allowed to have way more choices in terms of what they take and how they take things than I ever did as a high school student. So, it's just a lot more to think through about how you might want to manage your schedule.
One question that we're getting is, where will this be posted?
Okay, so all of this information is going to be posted on the Weebly, but it will also be posted definitely on the counseling website, probably sometime tomorrow, late afternoon. I know I have a lot of meetings in the morning, so it will probably be sometime tomorrow. It gets posted on the counseling website. I'll definitely try to post it on the Weebly. Definitely the PowerPoint will be posted on the Weebly. And then, of course, we'll have those Q&A sessions in March for any things. Once you get started in it all, if there's questions that come up, just reach out, let us know. But we'll have those Q&A sessions specifically to answer dual enrollment questions. Any other thoughts, guys?
Let's see. So I was just going through the published questions. Student asked about if it's possible to take college US history and college econ over the summer. So there's two parts to the answer. It's possible. However, 2 college classes is a lot, especially for a brand new dual enrollment student. If you had been taking dual enrollment classes this year, maybe it would be an option. Maybe have that conversation with your school counselor. However, most students, even true college students, do not take more than 1 class in the summer. It's just a lot. It is an entire semester of material crammed into like 6 weeks time, maybe even less. So typically we would recommend just 1 class in the summer, and then you could fit the other one in your schedule for next year.
Because keep in mind, summer classes are already an accelerated pace, and so 1, maybe 2 is probably going to be too much. Because you also want to do well. You don't want to just get by, because it's a full credit hitting your transcript. If you don't do well, it does no good for your GPA.
Yeah. A student asked if you indicated full-time dual enrollment, but then you decided to change to part-time. Is there a deadline? So not necessarily hard and fast deadline. However, you just got to know that the sooner you let your counselor know, the better. If you make, if you decide at the very last minute, in say mid to late July that, oh, never mind, I want to do part-time dual enrollment, not full-time, then you're kind of at the mercy of what our master schedule has available. It might be that your desired class is full. It might be that your desired class is not at the time that works with the dual enrollment classes that you've already registered for, that kind of thing. So if you make that kind of decision, the sooner the better.
Well, and keep in mind, I'm going to throw this out there. It's school counselor week, and school counselors get the summer. We get the summer off. So after that first week of June, I am like with my kids, and I'm not going to be doing dual enrollment stuff until I get back in middle of July. So if you need something, you really need to get in touch with me before I leave, or you're subject to my availability when I get back. So it's just one of those things that the sooner we know about your situation or what changes you want to make, the better. Definitely the availability of classes may be way more limited if you thought you were going to do one thing and then you change your mind.
Yeah. Ideally, let us know before school ends at the end of May.
I will also say the full-time dual enrollment thing, I know that I have students that have enjoyed it. It's very few students that do full-time because they still want to be a high school student. They still want to enjoy, some of the perks of high school, because this may be your last year in high school, or you are an athlete, or you have clubs and things you want to be involved in. When you're a full-time dual enrollment student, it's really kind of hard to do it all.
Okie dokie. Let's see. There's some questions that looks like.
I would say, anytime you're reading on an application, usually there's helpful tips or a little question mark. They usually specifically state when you read through all of the directions on an application, how they want you to answer it. So, make sure you go slow through the application. Don't try to race through. It is not a race. I mean, if you qualify for dual enrollment, you're going to get in. It's not like they only have, at least for Georgia State and Gwinnett Tech, they don't have like 20 seats, and you know, if you're the 21st person to submit your application, you don't get in. It's if you meet the requirements for their institution. For Georgia State and Gwinnett Tech, if you meet their requirements, you will get in. With Georgia Tech, they are competitive and they have a limited number of seats that they will fill. So that's a totally separate process. But if you meet the requirements for Georgia State and you get all your stuff in, then they'll send an acceptance. It's not a limited program.
Okay, so instead of typing out the answers, I'm just going to go through these. And Ms. Chilson and Ms. Murray, pop in if you want to. Someone asked if I want to go to Georgia Tech, it is a must to have taken AP Calc BC. Yes, AP Calc BC is a prereq for Distance Math 1, and then Math 1 is a prereq for Distance Math 2.
And even for full-time, you're not going to get that as a full-time student if you haven't done BC Calc. And for the computer science program, you have to have had 2 APs in a math and science, and you would have to have done, you know, a good bit. So yeah.
What are the benefits of taking dual enrollment? For example, instead of taking AP US History, if I take it as dual enrollment, benefits there. So the main benefit with that comparison is dual enrollment US History is 1 semester. AP US History is a year-long class. So if you take dual enrollment US History, you can take a second dual enrollment class the next semester in that period, quote, in that time of day. So AP US History would take a full year. Dual enrollment US History is just 1 semester. Let's see. Someone says, taking college English instead of AP Lang for 11th grade, will that be easier than AP Lang? So if a student going into 11th grade has only taken through 10th grade English and they take English 1101, then you're required to take English 1102, and then you're required to take English 2130, which is College American Lit. That's the equivalent for 11th grade American Lit, which is a specific graduation requirement. So it's really apples and oranges when you're comparing AP classes and dual enrollment classes. I think what I shared with another question asker earlier was the difficulty of material, probably a little bit more difficult in AP classes. However, in AP classes here at Chattahoochee, there's recovery. You might be able, your teachers might be flexible and let you turn in something late. They might let you reschedule a test date if you have too many on one day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that flexibility of being a high school student. When you're a college student, maybe the college material might be a titch less difficult than the AP material, but good luck having a conversation with a professor and saying, I'm sorry, I have too many tests. Can I switch it to a different date? Or can I turn in an assignment late? You might find one here or there that might be a little bit flexible. However, the chances are probably lower. How many hours?
I would also say, like, AP classes are very standardized. The same class that is taught here is taught in California and in New York, and all the teachers that teach AP, they are specifically trained in teaching AP classes. They sit through classes on how to teach these classes. So when you take a college class like English 1101 down the street at Georgia State, what they cover in that class is subject to whatever the professor wants to cover. I mean, yeah, there's certain standards, but there's a lot of academic freedom that comes with being a college professor. And there's not somebody sitting over their shoulder saying you have to teach this in this method in this way. So the same holds true that if a student takes English 1101 at Georgia State with one professor, and then another dual enrollment kid over in Cobb takes a dual enrollment class at Kennesaw with English 1101, those 2 professors could teach the class totally differently. And so that's why some colleges like to see an AP class, because they can compare how that student did, or the level of curriculum may be a little bit different than what you're going to get at a college class. Now, the benefit of the college class is college credit. You're not having to pay for that college class later, but that would pretty much be the same if you score high enough on that AP exam in May. So it's just something to consider. It also begs the question, I think, too, where do you plan to apply later down the line? Because while a lot of competitive institutions are totally fine with a dual enrollment class, some of them might not be, and that's up to you as the student and the parent to go and do your research and make sure that you're making good decisions for long-term plans.
Agreed. How many hours do we have to devote to dual enrollment in a day in the summer? I'm not even honestly sure how to answer that question. It could be, like Ms. Chilson said, the differences. Ask the professor. English 1101 with one professor at Georgia State in the summer, and same class, another professor could be very, very different.
Totally different. Yeah.
Can colleges see which institutions you take dual enrollment, I'm guessing, through? So I'm thinking that's meaning, so on your high school transcript, it does not say Georgia State dual enrollment, Gwinnett Tech dual enrollment. However, most students that are taking dual enrollment classes ideally want that credit to transfer to a future college. So once you get to the point that you're applying to college, you're going to be wanting to send that transcript from Georgia State or Gwinnett Tech or whoever to that future college. So at that point, they will be able to see where it's coming from. If a student is going to take over 30 hours of classes, can he or she apply for HOPE or other scholarships? So this is where the HOPE grant can come into play. However, it is of the colleges that are in our area, HOPE grant only applies at Gwinnett Tech, does not apply at Georgia State. So if you are doing dual enrollment through Georgia State and you max out your 30 hours and you want to keep going, you have to pay for it. Mm-hmm. It's not cheap, but probably compared to a traditional 4-year public college, it's probably cheaper. So it's really just
waiting until you get to college, and getting the HOPE scholarship is going to be cheaper.
Exactly, yeah. So it's really just like it's an individual family decision. What is the minimum score for a PSAT to get into Gwinnett Tech? That's where we would reference, or we would recommend you go to. If you go to our Weebly and then click on the Gwinnett Tech tab at the top, a little bit further down, there's a link to their testing website, so you can see the test scores there. Based on past.
The reason why I don't post a lot of that stuff on my stuff is because they can change their requirements at any time. And as I have found over the past year, they could change prerequisites. They could come back and tell us, oh, we've changed how we're going to do this. So I try not to get too specific and have y'all go directly to the college website, because they're going to be the experts on what they'll allow. The other thing that I really did not mention in the PowerPoint that I probably should have is, as any student that gets into Gwinnett Tech can take college algebra at Gwinnett Tech without having go through any extra hoops and hurdles. If a student wants to take Math 1111, which is college algebra at Georgia State, they do have to meet certain standards. If you don't meet their requirements, either through the AccuPlacer or the SAT or the ACT, then you cannot take college algebra. Now, there are other math classes you can take and meet your 4th math requirement at the high school, but college algebra is really one of those classes that they just don't let anybody take, whereas at Gwinnett Tech they do. So, those are things to keep in mind.
And on the flip side, so with this example, it sounds like, oh, cool, well, Gwinnett Tech, might have more flexibility with, college algebra. On the flip side, at Gwinnett Tech, to take college econ, you have to have college algebra first, whereas at Georgia State, to take college econ, you don't have to have a college math first.
Correct. So it's really tricky with the prerequisites.
Yeah. A student asked, based on past years, would taking a DE course in the morning or the afternoon work better as a part-time DE student? So here's where I would say you need to take into account your extracurricular activities. Do you play sport? When is that practice? When are the games? Are you in marching band? That practice is in the afternoon. Are you a morning person or are you a night person? I am not a morning person. So if I had all these flexibility options, like Ms. Chilson said, these did not exist at all when I was in high school 21 years ago. I didn't say that. I would have loved to take dual enrollment classes at night even, and started high school at 10 o'clock in the morning. That would be great. But some students do not work like that. Some students are up and at it and want to be working and get going, and they want to take a 7 to 8:15 a.m. class, get it over with, and it's only 2 days a week. That's the other piece to consider. So, if you play a sport that has an afternoon practice pretty much every single day, you probably aren't going to want to take an afternoon dual enrollment class, and vice versa. Someone asks, so one could take 3 Fulton virtual and 3 dual enrollment courses next year. Yes, that is an option. But like Ms. Chilson said earlier, just keep in mind, if you're doing that, you're not coming to the high school campus. Now, of course, you're still our student, you're still connected to us, you have all the benefits of being a Chattahoochee and a Fulton County student, but you could potentially be missing out a little bit on what's happening here. I've had students, pretty much every year start, full-time dual enrollment or, half and half, and then partway through the year decide, I really want to be at Chattahoochee a little bit more. I'm missing seeing my friends. I'm missing feeling like I had my senior year, that kind of stuff.
And I think right now it's really complicated because of COVID that we don't know what next year's going to look like yet. And you're having to make decisions for next year now. And we have to make the best decisions we can in the moment. So, just do your best and remember that at least for dual enrollment, we can always change gears halfway through the year and make a different plan. As long as we're satisfying grad requirements, that's really the part that matters.
Yeah. Someone asks, are the college credits earned from DE accepted in colleges outside the state of Georgia? Overall, many colleges, yes, many colleges will accept transfer credits from four-year public colleges, from technical colleges like Gwinnett Tech. However, ultimately, it is the student and parent or guardian's responsibility to check transferability with, whatever future colleges you might be considering in the future. What I've seen happen with some schools is that they will not transfer credit that was taken to satisfy a high school graduation requirement. They will only take credit that was taken as an additional, a student chose college psychology and that didn't count towards our high school graduation requirements. That's some colleges. That's not every college by any means. So like I said, ultimately check with whatever future colleges you're considering. See, what is in, okay, RHSC, that's the required high school curriculum. That's a college term used, by colleges in Georgia to talk about the required high school curriculum for college admissions. What is an RHSC English unit for the Georgia state admission requirements? I'm not completely sure what that question is asking. To get into Georgia State for dual enrollment, that is, you just have to apply. There's not necessarily specific English requirements. I'm thinking if you're applying to Georgia State as, for traditional college, then English 1101 taken through dual enrollment satisfies high school senior year English, and that can count. I think the last question I'm seeing here, unless I need to go look at this little other column of questions, is a student applied last semester at Georgia State for dual enrollment and got accepted this semester for fall 2021. Do I have to reapply? This is where I would suggest you go back and talk to the college and just be absolutely certain. If I think they call it term of entry. If your term of entry says fall 2021, then it sounds like you're probably good on that part. You would just have to continue with our pieces of the application. Okay,
that's the big thing for me is that we have, for you to continue with the process, we have to have your documents by March 31st. That contract is the biggest piece of it. If I've got a contract in hand, we can work with getting through, the process. But again, August 1st is the final deadline to have it all put together. But if you have not turned in your contract and your initial stuff, you haven't applied to the college, that kind of thing, by March 31st, you cannot continue the process. We're now moving into you doing high school classes or Fulton virtual classes or whatever.
Okay, and then let me see a couple more. I think we're getting close to being done. This is pretty common. So when do we get the opportunity to choose whether we want to do DE online or in person? That is not at all included in the application process whatsoever. You do not indicate whether you want to take dual enrollment classes or online or face-to-face until you are actually registering for classes. When you go to register for your classes, you'll be able to select the campus, and the campus you'll either select online or the Alpharetta campus. Does Georgia Tech only offer dual enrollment for STEM classes? So it's kind of a complicated question. So There's specific programs, so like the computer science program, the distance math program, those are definitely STEM classes. Students who do full-time dual enrollment at Georgia Tech, well, first of all, that's a rare occurrence. We usually only have 1, possibly 2 students each year that do full-time dual enrollment at Tech. Those are students who have pretty much completely maxed out their curriculum here at Chattahoochee. Those students do have access to other classes. So I've had students take economics classes and public policy and English and sociology and all sorts of those classes. But you really have to be a full-time student at Georgia Tech to do anything other than STEM. How can we check if a college accepts Georgia dual enrollment credits? Would it be on their website? Every college is going to have their own transfer credit policy. Typically what I tell students and parents to Google is XYZ college transfer equivalency table. Then when you get to, say, Clemson's website, you'll be able to, it's usually a drop-down list of some sort, or where you can select, okay, the college I want to check transferability from is in select your state, Georgia, and then it'll bring up a list of all the colleges in Georgia that they've already evaluated transfer credits from. Okay, so I'm going to select Gwinnett Tech or Georgia State, and then it'll tell you every single class that they've already decided is transferable to their institution. There are some colleges out there that do not get that specific on their website, and that's when we would recommend you reach out to their admissions office directly. Is there a list of all participating colleges? Yes, on the course directory, there is a list of every single participating college in the state. Now, plenty of colleges in the state aren't going to be at all in our vicinity. Albany State University, well, that's not at all close. So,
well, not only that, but like I've had students like, oh, I really want to be, I'm guessing you're talking about dual enrollment participating, but like students would like to take a dual enrollment class at Kennesaw or, you know, West Georgia or somewhere else. And yeah, that's fine to do, but those colleges do not regularly get in touch with me about their processes, their deadlines. All of the things would completely be on the student to figure out and do. So, you know, it's just one of those things that I know Gwinnett Tech and Georgia State, they're going to send me a roster at the end of the, you know, registration period, and I can double check who actually got registered. I'm going to get transcripts at the end of the semester. I'm not going to necessarily get that from West Georgia or Kennesaw or Valdosta or any other schools that you could potentially do dual enrollment with. And so for those reasons, the schools that are closest to us are the best options. Just like when I used to work in Forsyth, those students did dual enrollment at Lanier Tech in North Georgia because those were the colleges closest to them.
Yeah. I just found another question. Someone's asking, as a part-time dual enrollment student, we can take a fine arts class, but we must pay out of pocket. So yes, if you want to take a fine arts class. And it will be outside of your school day. Yes, that's the other piece of it. So number one, since the state doesn't fund fine arts classes through dual enrollment, one, you'd be paying for out of pocket no matter what time of year you take it. And number two, because it's self-paid, it cannot be listed as one of your regular Chattahoochee classes. Somewhere in, I think in the published questions, I had answered something about any class that goes in your Chattahoochee schedule must be must earn FTE. And that's just a term that we use, but it has to do with state funding for public school students. A class that you / a parent guardian is paying for out of pocket is not an FTE eligible class. So you would have to be taking 6 Chattahoochee classes in whatever format, plus this fine arts class that you would be paying for out of pocket. That can be, you know, an extra workload that, you know, that's something that you would have to discuss with your family. I think the majority of our questions have been answered. If you have any last questions, go ahead and shoot them in the chat box, and then we can take a look at them. But I think we're pretty much close to being done.
And I guess at this point, I'm just going to wrap up. I want to say thank you, one, to Ms. Murray for answering a ton of questions behind the scenes. I'm checking that we probably had close to 200 questions that that have been, you know, addressed. And then also to Ms. Blunt, both of them for just staying late and helping with this presentation. This is Dual enrollment is a huge undertaking. It is not just me doing it. It is all the counselors in the counseling office. All of us take a lot of time and energy into dual enrollment. One of the counselors called me today and like, oh my gosh, are these funding questions ever going to end? Are these emails from GSU ever going to stop? And I'm like, no, we're going to keep getting them. So
You're never gonna
just
stop.
when we get done with one piece, it rolls into another piece, and we do it all year long. So thank you to the counseling office for being so supportive and helping out. And hopefully we have been able to explain a lot of this program to you all tonight. It is, as I said, a beast of a program. It is a lot of information. It can be overwhelming, and it just takes a lot of sorting through information and reading everything that you receive. If you do that, you're going to be in good shape and you're going to understand it and you're going to be pros by the end of it. And just if y'all have more questions, please come to the Q&As that are going to be in March. We have the 2 dates in March that you can certainly join through the Teams link, and then we'll be happy to answer questions. So I appreciate all of you. I hope you have a good night. We're going to roll into hump day tomorrow. Happy Wednesday. Okay, thank you all. Good night.
Thanks.